VCV rack sequence that I made with this module from 21 kilohertz called Tachyon. And it's pretty good. Just like cross modulation, K-oscillator kind of thing. It's tight. Hey, we got a Basquiat fan. Yeah, Basquiat's my muse, for real. My desktop is worth, with all of the Basquiat, over $1 billion. Appreciate lurkers and all that. Okay, so today we're going to talk about delays. If you want to get the course outline or just the class outline, hit the Discord. One of the mods can probably link you up with the Discord link in the chat. We're going to get the bot set up soon, so it'll just link you. Also, Twitter just for Church of Sound Design. Just so if you want to get actual like notifications and stuff through Twitter, you're not going to be muddied down with my bullshit. Take me out of the equation. Okay, so yeah, delays are pretty tight. I accidentally said we're going to go into saturation in my last class, and we definitely could, but saturation is so deep if you really want to understand it from like a wave folding, wave shaping level, that it's better if we just go and like straight up do a couple classes. One just about wave folding and wave shaping in general and how to control the dynamic range with that, and then also just like a full day on the functionality and all the crazy shit you can do with trash, because there is delay inside of that. If you were in the last class, you kind of saw me do some stuff like that with resampling with the kick I designed. Yeah, it's kind of like a 808. Started as an 808, then I turned it into a 909, and then I processed the shit out of it, and then it became a big old boomer. What's up, everybody? What's up, Galva? Okay, so, oh hell yeah, 88. You have a Basquiat tattoo? That is the vibe. On my second monitor, I have a Basquiat cat drawing. Also a vibe. Okay, so I'm sure everybody kind of knows how a delay works a little bit. So, you know, don't really need to go too deep into, you know, how a copy is made. But, yeah. So, really simple. Tape delay, tap delay, grain delay, chorus, flanger. You can make these effects with any of these delays. So a chorus and a flanger, those are both delay effects. A reverb is also a delay effect. And I have that in parentheses here just because it's actually a different type of delay. It's called a diffusion network, or RT60, which is algorithm or calculation on how to calculate delays over time. And it's really mastered by like Eventide, you know, and their module, their hardware module is worth over $6,000 to $8,000 around there because of the DSP that's involved with it. And the originals also sound really amazing. There's a bunch of emulations for that as well. That's technically a tap delay diffusion network. It can also be a plate verb, so it can be all of those things. Alright, so we're actually going to be talking about like Valhalla stuff and like Ubermod Valhalla Delay, the new one that just came out. Highly recommend it. I think it's really good. And then also we're going to be talking about some Ableton stuff. So that's all going to be what we're going to be talking about for the first part of the class. Now we're going to go into reverbs. We're going to talk about some Valhalla stuff as well as waves and some audio damage stuff. So there's a ton of different reverbs that sound great as well. Valhalla is just across the board a very good algorithm. So Valhalla actually licenses their algorithm out to different companies, and they go and use it inside of their modules. So EOS by Audio Damage is actually a hardware Eurorack module that they purchased the license to go and create a diffusion network based off the Valhalla diffusion network inside of a Eurorack module. Yeah, so we're also going to be working in convolution reverb in Max for Live, and that's kind of where we're going to leave off with the convolution reverb. I have Altiverb 7. I just haven't set it up on my Mini yet, so I haven't really set up any of my iLock devices and shit, so that'll be a little bit more into the advanced section. It also makes sense for it to be there anyways, because you can do a lot of really good stuff with just the convolution reverb. If you're in Logic, Space Designer is amazing. Mac has a IR designer as well, so you can go and create impulse responses with Mac's built-in impulse response designer. Yeah, Altiverb is sick. So you can actually emulate the reverb of what it's like to be in like an open hilly plain. So that's like super cool if you're going to be creating like a battle scene or something. And then you can create depth and like put things like full wet on a like, you know, a plain verb or some type of open filled verb. Yeah, convolution reverbs are really cool because you can make them from pretty much anything. And they're also a form of spectral filtering, so you can also use them in effect type ways and drop in loops and do all types of weird shit with it. Because if you drop a loop in there, now it creates transients in the convolution, so that pretty much emulates a tape delay. So it combines frequency content with linear time content, how it develops over time, and then the type of timbre it's going to emulate or resonate. But yeah, so I included in this one, just because we're going to be talking about a lot of different plugins, I wasn't about to go and outline every single one of them, because it's a lot of them. So that would be like a 70-page, you know, thing that you guys would all be subjected to, and it's not going to be very productive, but it's all good. Anyways, so tape delays, that's where we're going to start out, and we're actually going to go and just hop straight into Ableton, because we're going to start with delay. So I just wanted to introduce a bunch of that shit. You know, some people, you know, get a little bit bogged down by history and shit, so you can definitely look into that. We're going to talk a little bit more about the history of what that is as well, but we're just going to put it into practice. So delay is pretty much a digital 2-tap delay. So it also functions like a tape delay as well. Something that's more directly a tape delay is H delay by Waves. So this is really good. I use this for a lot of stuff. So we're going to talk about that in a second as well. So we have, you know, 2 channels here. We can tell each of the copies how the DSP should work. So repitch, when I change the time, it's going to repitch the actual copy of the signal. So that should work like a tape delay. So when you hear it, you know, it actually, hold up here. Yeah, so when you hear it change in time, you're going to hear it change in pitch as well. Okay, so that should all function in every tape delay that is able to go into millisecond values. So switch it to a millisecond value, put it down to that. Anytime you go below 50 milliseconds, you'll start to generate a tone. And it goes inversely to like a frequency range on a key tracked scale. So it's going to be going down in millisecond value. So smaller values equal higher pitches. I've done some of the math here, and around 22 milliseconds is an F. That's kind of where I start, because I use Fs a lot. Yeah, so what I recommend, if you're not in Ableton, to go and, use Valhalla, get your hands on waves. The big thing is I'm explaining the theory behind all of them. This is not applicable just to Ableton. Ableton stock is really good to talk about because it's super simple. And it's really out in the front. Everything's just right there, but essentially if a delay functions correctly, it should do all this stuff as well. So stock with a tape delay, or they're also called like bucket brigade. I can't even say it. Bucket brigade. Yeah, those all have similar functions. You're gonna see the bucket brigade in like Eurorack stuff more, or like VCV rack, but also the new Valhalla delay. Let's load that one up as well. So this one's really relevant to this because it's kind of like two tape delays in one. Because a tape delay is different from a tap delay. Why? Because a multi-tap delay can go up to 16 copies, 32 copies. In Eurorack, there's a really good module called the Rainmaker, and the homie Zach has one. We've made a bunch of the HFO shit with it. But also it has comb filtering and all this other really, really good shit to like use for like physical modeling and all types of like whoosh sound design and crazy shit. So this Valhalla delay has all the modes: tape, hi-fi, bucket brigade. Has digital, which is like this, kinda. So this is modeled kind of after the Eventide, like delay, or not delay, not the Eventide actually. It's kind of a version of the Echoplex, post Echoplex. So tape, bucket brigade are going to be kind of like the Echoplex. So pitch and time are always connected because it's a tape playback. So in a tape setting, you change the speed of the playback. And then you can change kind of like a low pass filter, but it is kind of like downsampling. So it's a mixture of low pass filtering with like downsampling. So pass is going to be darkest, present, future, brightest, future. And then you have all your types. So ghost, pitch, reverse pitch are kind of the more filter banky kind of sounds. Ghost is really tight, especially with loops. And then everything else, BB duck, baby duck, and clarity duct tape. What duck means is it's going to hear its own output and then duck the signal of the delay to whatever incoming signal is happening. So it's kind of like a volume follower. So it's ducking to itself. It's not just saying duck because ducks are cute. That's, probably the reasoning behind saying baby duck. But duck means ducking. Okay, so all of these are going to have some type of bandpass filter. So bandpass filter in every other sense of bandpass filter besides here, where this changes our low pass and our high pass. Low pass, high pass. Low pass, high pass. This is going to be low cut, high cut. High pass, low pass. And then a link, so you can actually move these at the same time. make them work like a bandpass filter. It means bucket brigade duck. So it's the bucket brigade tape delay, but ducking. Yeah, highly recommend you put this on the list of things to get. Just in general, get your hands on it somehow. Try it before you buy it, kind of thing. You know, definitely support these companies, because if we don't, then they will go away. That's what happens. Yeah, Valhalla is definitely, they're like kind of a small company too. I think it's really just one dude, and then he has like a team. So it's very local type business shit. This is corporate. This is corporate shit. It's local business. And then this is European business, which I don't consider that part of this. All right. Anyway, so you have 3 different flavors from these. All of them are gonna have filters. All of them are gonna have modulation. You got modulation for those filters in here. I'm not gonna have that for this. You're gonna have modulation for time, and pretty much all of these. So mod rate, and then right here depth rate, and then right here you have rate, and that goes to this. So you can patch it to time or to your filter. So that's cool. That's a little extra thing, I guess. Yeah, so this is going to have pretty much one mode, which is repitch. These are the different types of pretty much algorithms for the copies. Kind of like this. A repitch is going to repitch based on the millisecond value. So you're going to hear that pitch change. Fade is going to crossfade in between the copies. And then jump is going to jump or hard cut and not crossfade, so you're going to get clicks and pops. That can be kind of cool if you're going and making like a micro delay, which is like a comb filtered effect. So once I start to modulate this, though, you can really hear those clicks and pops. So 3 very different sounds. This is more jumbled. This also jumbles the pitch. So I kind of like both. I usually use it just in a repitch mode though. Especially when I'm doing like effects for like throw effects on individual like sounds, like especially like bass hits and stuff. And that's going to be kind of like the last day of this class, which is week 8. Is going to be snapshot automation, which that's just like a fancy way to say automating shit. But automating shit because there's a process to it, because you need to create space for certain parts, and also because you need to go and actually cut things out, make fills actually quiet behind it, like, and actually make it quiet, like not have any tails and all this other stuff, or add a ton of space for a quarter note, you know, and then break that out. So that's the kind of shit that eventually you should be kind of like super quick on that, and that should be part of your like workflow and stuff. I'm sure if any of you guys watch like Cursa or Seppa or frequent Mr. Bill, any of those dudes, they all have some type of process like that. A lot of it's through resampling too. So it's like resample something crazy, and then you have a lot of space for effects, a lot of space for processing too. Okay, so remember, pretty much every delay is going to give you this comb filtered effect. So you can combine different micro delays and create multiple tones in one sound. If I'm in Ableton, then I can go and create groups and then run them parallel. If I'm running them in series, then it combines them in series. Oh yeah, definitely EEPROM. Yeah, don't mean to leave him out, but he's not exactly somebody I would think like has steady stuff like that to check out. But he's definitely talked a ton about using Valhalla shit. So for the videos he does have out there, definitely check those out. As well as like using Saturn as a delay as well. Saturn can be used as a delay. Yeah, so you can use micro delays for pretty much everything. Micro delays is like comb filtering, to Cookie Divine what you said about PC music. Yes, so physical modeling and corpus and all that stuff kind of revolves around that. So if I'm using corpus and I'm changing the pitch, then it's going to actually be changing the time of the delay. Just running a sound. It's probably from the H delay. Just H delay running some latent analog noise in the background. Yeah, so corpus is really cool. We're going to talk about that. If we have some time today, we'll definitely talk about that. But yeah, so going to talk about the Valhalla delay for a little bit here, just because it's way more complex than the H delay. Alright, so this is full wet now on the Valhalla delay. So you have 4 different kind of like time divisions, as well as different time division styles. So single is a single tap, and then dual is dual tap, left and right channel, and that you can set in notes, dotted. So if you want it to be kind of sunk together, best to kind of like set it to a note value of some type. Kind of create a little ping pong like that. Ping pong delays you can make manually by offsetting left and right channel by a time division. So if you want to sound clean and kind of more up front, 16th to 18th, 18th, a 16th to 8th note is kind of ideal between left and right channel. Alright, so that kind of like stays in time and doesn't kind of like offset with your sound. But yeah, millisecond values, if you want to go and create some more microtonal effects, then best to go on single, and then spread is going to modulate pretty much both of the taps that it's still generating, because it's still generating 2 taps, just stacking them on top of each other. When you go into dual, it gives you control of each of them in left and right channel. So technically it's a mono signal here. Alright, so I'm just taking off all the other processing for now. Alright, so just remember you could do any of that stuff down here. Really good to know that, because this is kind of my test for when I'm choosing out delays and stuff. This one, when you go and kind of like make a microtonal effect or a comb filter, every single mode sounds completely different. Let's actually turn this delay off for now. So I'm just going through them, not talking about them, just because I want you just to hear them. All right, but yeah, you can kind of hear how each of them kind of gives you a different timbre. Every single one is a little bit darker, a little bit brighter, more resonance, less resonance, depending on what delay it's emulating. So tape, BBD, the bucket brigade delay, those are always going to be a little bit darker. Baby duck is a little bit brighter, but now it has the ducking set to its own output. So if you want to go and try those out, but then make them a little bit brighter, you can change the era. And then also, you can add drive to it in order to create a little bit more saturation and harmonics from that. Okay, so pretty much all the Valhalla delays push their feedbacks to 200%, which will self-oscillate. So you just want to make sure that you don't like destroy your own ears with that. But yeah, so they're all pretty straightforward though. My favorite is Ghost because it also adds this frequency shifter into it. I'm wholly not talking about diffusion just for the moment, but yeah, this one sounds really cool when doing microtonal stuff as well, just because now you're getting the frequency shifter to add into it. Alright, so it sounds pretty cool. You get a lot of really cool effects. So the frequency shifter is pretty much a sine wave oscillator that's modulating the pitch of the actual digital delay in here. And so you can pretty much add like an individual harmonic into the sound, and it's pretty cool. Alright, so quad is an actual tap delay now. So it only has 4 taps, but it can now detune them same way it was doing it with the single. So spread is detune, or slight modulation between the times between each tap. So now you have 4 taps. Swell is going to allow you to pretty much kind of sum up the feedback over time. All taps summed together. If it's on repeat, then the feedback comes from the last tap. So 1, 2, 3, 4 taps. Swell, all of them. Repeat, only D. Depending on which ones you have off, A is going to be the last one you repeat. So I like swell and then kind of pushing spacing. That sounds pretty cool, especially with Ghost on. Alright, so in the color section here, on top of this weird frequency shifted sound, and this is a really cool way to transform stuff. We'll talk about more, I guess, non-sound designy ways to use delays. This is really the best way for me to go and just make random effects and stuff, because not only because I just keep this, not only could I just keep this as a like millisecond value, I can also automate this and then repitch it and create like a riser out of it. And I can also automate the frequency along with delay, so I can do a bunch of stuff with this. I'm also shaving off a lot of the highs still. But yeah, so the thing with the color is that drive actually adds a little bit of compression. So controls overdrive gain. So when you push the drive, you can hear it kind of crush it a little bit more, but it's also saturating it and giving it more color, which is exciting new harmonics into it. But yeah, it does add a little bit of compression to it. Just because it is saturation. Saturation should compress your signal if you're using it in like a wave shaping sense. So age turns up the effects of age on the processing. So past will mean it shaves off more high frequencies. So when you're pretty much in future, it kind of opens it up just a little bit more. Okay, so a lot of crazy shit you can do with that. Pretty much I would just like randomize everything here, shooting it around, pushing up the feedback. When I go and ride delays and stuff, I usually push the feedback over 100% and then pull it back pretty quickly so it can like over resonate and then not keep resonating. And that gives it that like kind of tape whir effect, where the whir I guess I'm talking about is that like soft swell in feedback, almost like if you had your mic on and your computer speaker running at the same time, where it gradually feeds back on itself over time and then just starts buzzing. Yeah, so pretty much like the delay knob here is always going to be in repitch mode, so it's always going to give you that effect. These settings here give you different kind of, I guess, not perspectives, but ways into that delay amount and ways to modulate between it. So ping pong, left and right, ratio will multiply or divide this amount. So this is a cool way to like kind of like set one and then use a percentage to change your millisecond value, because sometimes this is a little bit too wide of a range, especially when you're automating in any kind of like, you know, DAW scenarios. So having this is something actually I would do with just a macro to automate it a little bit more correctly. So I really like that they added this knob. But, you know, it's not an Uber mod, so once it's an Uber mod, it's going to be actually really chill. So yeah, so you can do a ton of shit with this. So remember, Ghost is going to be the frequency shifter. Tape and Bucket Brigade are very similar. Hi-Fi is the actual, you know, like digital delay. Again, same effects. You're going to get more or less harmonics. If you want to kind of take away some of those harmonics, you can set it to past. So I also like using delays as like early reflections as well. So early reflections are pretty much like a reverb. So if you're in a room and you're sitting like on a stage, the reverb for the room is from the perspective of sitting out in the audience. So it takes this amount of time for all the reflections from the sound source to reverberate off all the walls and eventually get to you. So that's what that sounds like. But an early reflection is when the player's on stage and the sound of their instrument reverberating off of like the floor, or if they're in the corner, off the corner. So when you're creating like a real orchestra and stuff, it's super important that you go and create early reflections and late reflections in order to create kind of an overall sound and summing. When you record a real orchestra, you actually have to mic up each instrument individually and then all of them as a whole. So in order to do that, you actually have to end it like that with delay. And you can also do that with verbs as well, but this is a quick way to kind of do that shit, as well as like vocal doubling and other things like that. Alright, so finally, like diffusion, and we know what mod does. It modulates this time value with a sine wave set to this hertz amount, and then presets down here. So diffusion, this creates kind of a like a wide range of, I guess, possible tap values, and then it goes in cycles between those very rapidly. The size opens up that kind of range to more values. So from 60 milliseconds up to 600, can multiply that. So the amount combined with size will create kind of like a diffusion network that's like a plate verb. So when you start to color it, darken it, it can become more like a Hall verb. So diffusion networks literally exist in every single reverb, but it's to create kind of like a string of delays that sound like the tail of a room. So what happens when I go and use the diffuser without a big time value? Inside of hi-fi, anything digital really, so that's hi-fi, digital, ghost, pitch, reverse pitch. Reverse pitch not so much, but when you turn this value up, you're actually going to hear kind of like a vocoder filter bank sound happen, because now it's separating the frequencies. Now it's starting to comb through it individually. There's more processing happening, pretty much. So when you start to push this value up, you're going to hear a tone start to be created. Okay, so Ghost is actually voiced specifically for this. So it's supposed to be inharmonic. They voiced it to sound creepy. That's why they called it Ghost. So delay, frequency shifting and loop, and weird diffusion. So weird diffusion. And then modulate that weird diffusion with the shifter. Yes. So that tone was directly created by the diffusion network. Okay, so these two values will kind of modulate this filter bank that's generated. So size controls the relative size of the diffusion network compared to the non-diffused delay. And then when it's off, diffusion network is not working. So it's an extra stage that's added onto this, an extra stage of DSP. Yeah, so when you use an algorithm like texture, this is why the DSP and Eventide is so expensive. You're actually capturing the Fletcher-Munson Nyquist version of the waveform, converting that into a spectrum. High quality spectrums are 512 sine waves put together. So it's converting it into that and then pretty much combing through it. So that's the only way to recreate polyphonic signal correctly. So in Ableton it's called Texture, Complex Pro, there's different versions of it. But if it's mono, it's tones, because it's only able to capture like a wide band. It's not able to discern between different harmonics and what's the fundamental, what's not. Yeah, I really like this one. Anyway, so yeah, that's pretty interesting. Pitch in here is going to be the mild granular version. And this is actually pretty interesting because diffusion is also part of grain clouds. So when you diffuse a grain, means split it up and send it all through the network, then you're able to control the pitch of each of those grains. So in a true granular delay, you can randomize all those values. Yeah, so you can make a ton of shit out of micro delays. So that's like running Amen break through Saturn and then distorting it, recording that, making an 808 out of that. There's a bunch of different ways you can do stuff. So diffuse, and you can shift the semitone value. Alright, so a lot of grain delays should sound like that. Just came back for a quick sweep. That's hilarious. But yeah, a lot of them will sound like this, still have that kind of bright flutter when it hits the higher note. We'll kind of keep repeating up octave ranges. And then, again, diffusion modulates that again. So in pitch mode, in all the pitch modes, I really like to use swell or quad mode because it sounds pretty interesting. And then, again, these are going to be for individual tape delay sounds, so deep little plonk noises, or using it as kind of like a delay for a vocal or something like that, something you want to be a little bit more subtle. Alright, so that will duck, and tape does the same thing. can you aim for certain frequency ranges like 440? Best thing to do if you're looking for stuff like that is to go and find the pitch of whatever you're sending through, and then go and shift up to a correct pitch. But you're not gonna have like a very specific control over where shit goes like directly. You know, you can't go and convert it into a quantized pitch, meaning like you know the pitch going into it and then send it into a key track scale. That's not what this is for. There's stuff in VTV Rack that can definitely do that though. Effectrix is another plugin that has this thing called a tonal delay, and that has a delay that's actually tuned to pitches. I used to use that when I would make rhythm back in like 2013, 2014. Effectrix 2, I believe, or Glitch 2. Glitch 2 also has that effect. Okay, so we talked about diffusion, we talked about all this stuff with the color, all the different modes in here, so definitely check out Valhalla Delay. This is the new one. It's super sick. I really like it. Okay, so moving on from that, we were talking about a couple different other types of delay. And, you know, this kind of covered a little bit about both tape delays and grain delays, so Valhalla is kind of a mixture of both. And then H delay here is literally just a tape delay. Alright, so what's this super good for on effects is the fade to gray effect. So fade to gray means, you know, wash out, so you can mix a dry wet of some type of delay and then run into a reverb and then macro both of those together and then just wash everything out. Kind of like a, you know, a transition effect for DJing. Alright, so H delay really only has a couple functions like that, so I use this for utility things. Like if I need a dub delay, like something that'll make immediate, you know, tape delay like reggae dub kind of thing, I go to H delay because I know it's going to have that timbre. One thing I always turn off is analog. Never have that on because it just puts noise in there at neg 48. It's pretty loud. And then if I want it to be darker, I turn on lo-fi, and that's kind of like the aging version of it. Yeah, so the fade to gray effect is like a specifically Ableton native effect, but you know, you can create that effect in any DAW. Okay, so that is that. Now let's talk about tap delays and chorus. So Ubermod, and actually haven't registered this one yet. Do not judge me. But yeah, so let's check out Ubermod and then chorus and then flanger. So flanger, just to kind of start over here, flanger is different from chorusing, or flanging is different from chorusing, because flanging is directly affecting the pitch of a sound. So it can modulate the delay time, where chorus kind of does the same thing, but it's slightly modulating the start position. So chorus effects, you can push the start position of two different tracks and create a chorus effect. And I do this a lot, specifically, you know, for vocals and stuff like that, to do like doubling. But in Ableton, you can just bring up this, so that's a little D on the bottom right, that's a track delay. And you can push it forward or back in time in order to create a delay effect. Alright, so what chorusing should sound like is kind of like a comb filter that's just like moving through the frequencies. Where flanging will sound similar, but it'll sound kind of like, I don't know if you guys know, like those rock effects. So it's actually modulating like a physical delay here. Both of them are pretty much the same. Both of them you can flip the phase. So positive phase is going to give you pretty much like a sawtooth, all positive and negative values in the harmonic series, which is going to equal kind of a sawtooth. And then negative values only give you odd harmonics. It's going to sound like a square wave. Yes, to Mary. Phasing versus pitch modulation. So it's modulating start position as opposed to pitch. This flanger has a few more effects though. It has an envelope follower as well as an LFO. So you can modulate all of your delay time things with that specifically. So really simple effects. So in chorus now you have 2 taps built into it. And you can control those together like that by clicking the little equal sign, and they'll be linked. Unlink it, goes back to where it was relatively. And then you can set the modulation for delay 2 off, fixed, so it's always modulating at a certain frequency, or set it to mod. And then delay 1 has a high pass filter on it. Alright, so they all do the same thing pretty much. So you can make both of those effects with Ubermod or any of your chorus effects with a feedback function. So Ubermod is really tight because it has all these different types of taps or amounts. So 2-tap chorus, 4-tap ensemble, which is more of a randomized pitch. Let's turn this guy on. Alright, so all these numbers we'll be talking about pretty much how many taps and then tuning of those taps. So ensembles are going to be detuned by default and they're going to be a little bit wider. Whereas the choruses will give you just straight up control over that. Super 6 is kind of a mixture between all of these where it kind of adds a chorus effects. It's a little bit of an ensemble, so it's kind of in between that. But it's 6 taps and then 6-tap random. So it's randomizing this delay amount every single time you tap into it. So a phaser is a little bit different. Phasing or a phaser is actually adding a filter to the equation and then resonating it at multiple poles. We'll talk about that in a second as well. But yeah, it's not exactly the same thing, but it is relevant. So that is a good question there. Dual ensemble is kind of like a mixture of, 4-tap ensemble. So 2 of them, left and right channel. So technically like 8 taps. Let's get some acapellas going on here. Not rap. Let's just get some straight up Motown shit.
Whoa!
Not Marvin Gaye.
Respectfully, I say, cherish the moments with you. Respectfully, I say, cherish the moments with you. Respectfully, I say, cherish the moments with you. Really sitting where? Cherish the moments with you. Respectfully, I say to thee, I'm aware. Cherish the moments with you. Respectfully, I say to thee.
Alright, so those sound really good on vocals. It gives a lot of width, and you can use like small mix amounts.
Cherish the moments with you. Respectfully, I say to thee, I'm aware. Cherish the moments with you.
So it kind of gives a mixture of both reverb and delay when you push the feedback to a kind of manageable amount. When you hit 100% on here, it starts to resonate pretty hard. So we got the A tap here after the dual ensemble. Kind of the same thing, but more directly just a chorus. Nothing is kind of spread out by default. And then we have 16 tap, so phase modulation, so modulates the phase of each tap, kind of like the Super 6. And then we got 16 tap.
Cherish the moments with you. Respectfully, I say to thee, I'm aware. Cherish the moments with you. Respectfully, I say to thee, I'm aware. Cherish the moments with you. Respectfully, I say to thee, I'm aware. Cherish the moments with you. Respectfully, I say to thee, I'm aware. Cherish the moments with you. Respectfully, I say to thee, respectfully, I say to thee, I'm aware. Cherish the moments with you.
Alright, so I really like those effects for that kind of stuff. Also, it has time divisions built into here, so you can kind of like sync them.
Cherish the moments with you. Respectfully, I say to thee, I'm aware. Cherish the moments with you.
It's a lot of control though. I usually just use it in free. And then you have 32 tap, which is 32 taps. So it's really, really, really deep for like a microtonal delay.
Cherish the moments with you. Respectfully, I say to thee, I'm aware. Cherish the moments with you. Respectfully, I say, I'm aware. Cherish the moments with you. Respectfully, I say to thee, I'm aware. Cherish the moments with you. Respectfully, I say to thee,
So that's pretty cool. And this is multi-tap delays. So kind of like tap tape delays, you know, tap-based tape delays. But now you have a ton of taps. You can create chorus effects, flange effects, and you know, you have control over how many taps you want to use. But yeah, in Ubermod, we have a ton of other shit in here. We have a diffusion network that's off by default, similar to the way that the Valhalla delay works.
cherish the moments with you. Respectfully, I say to thee, I'm aware. Cherish the moments with you. Respectfully, I say to thee, I'm aware.
Alright, so diffusion network again creates a string of delays, a algorithm calculating multiple snapshots. So it becomes pretty intense pretty quickly, so you have to balance out your feedback with your diffusion network. It has the button, turns it on, diffusion amount, size, and you can hear that directly affect this delay. And then modulation for this in specifically. So you have depth on by default at 50%, and it's at 0.5 hertz. Then you have an EQ in here, so you can change the mode bright or dark. Bright is going to be blue, dark is going to be black. And then you can kind of like change it up. It's kind of like a different voicing, similar to the way the age affects the timbre as well. And then a spatial EQ is kind of like it's like disperser a little bit. It's kind of like a phased out band or peak filter.
Cherish the moments with you. Respectfully, I say to thee, I'm aware. Cherish the moments with you. Respectfully, I say to thee, I'm aware. Cherish the moments with you. Respectfully, I say to thee, I'm aware. Cherish the moments with you.
Then we have a drive section where I can push the input gain in order to get more drive into here, which will generate a feedback loop. So kind of have to manage that as well.
Cherish the moments with Respectfully, I say to thee, I'm aware. Cherish the moments with you. Respectfully, I say to thee, I'm aware.
And then I can add a noise oscillator that's resonated into it.
Cherish the moments with you. Respectfully, I say to thee, I'm aware. Cherish the moments with you. Respectfully, I say to thee, I'm aware. Cherish the moments with you.
Kind of brighten it up, give it some noise as well. And then you can patch it in at pre or post amp, which is pre or post output. And then your modulation section, that's all hooked up in here to your depth. This is all the controls for that. So you have slow rate, which is a slow fixed frequency oscillator, and then a vibrato weight, which is a higher frequency oscillator. So it has two modulators. Slow depth is always on, vibrato you have to turn on, and then overmod multiplies these rate amounts. So that will become frequency modulation.
Cherish the moments with you. Respectfully, I say to thee, I'm aware. Cherish the moments with you. Respectfully, I say to thee, I'm aware. Cherish the moments with you.
Alright, so when you use overmod, always turn down your feedback. Like below about 20%. I start from there. Because overmod also multiplies this, so if it's moving up and down super rapidly and then it's hitting the feedback, it's going to be just all over the place.
Respectfully, I say to thee, I'm aware. I live some moments with you. Respectfully, I say to thee. I live some moments with you.
I say to thee, I'm aware. Cherish the moments with you.
Yes, to Mazar's question, yes, I make pads and drones with overmod as well. And aperture, that's a good point, because I'm about to talk about shimmer. Alright, so that's kind of the last point here. One last thing in here is the DSP control. So you have just a feedback engine, a smoothing for each grain, and then a speed amount, so you can half time each of the grains.
Cherish the moments with you. Respectfully, I say to thee, I'm aware. Cherish the moments with you. Respectfully, I say to thee, I'm aware. Cherish the moments with you. Respectfully, I say to thee, I'm aware. Cherish the moments with you. Respectfully, I say to thee, I'm aware. Cherish the moments with you. Respectfully, I say to thee, I'm aware. Cherish the moments with you. Respectfully, I say to thee, I'm aware. Cherish the moments with you. Respectfully, I say to thee, I'm aware. Cherish the moments with you.
Alright, so that's Ubermod. Ubermod is a staple in my workflow. I use it on respaces, I use it on pretty much everything. Alright, so now let's talk about grain delays. So grain delays into reverbs, and then we're going to do some effects and shit. And thank you for sticking around if you did. I know this is a lot of shit to digest. Yeah. So anyways, so shimmer is another, well, I guess, grain delay diffusion network, but shimmer is specifically a diffusion network. So the reverb mode is mono, big stereo, medium stereo, and small. So you have to go and set it to stereo though. So that's something to keep in mind. By default, it's shifting the pitch by 12. So you gotta pull that back. Size value will also kind of modulate pitch. Again, that's diffusion plus delay size. So it's creating a string of delays. Then we have a high cut, a modulator, a mode, dark, or we can change up its granular engine, single voice, dual voice, or reverse.
Cherish the moments when you sanctity, I'm aware of the moments with you.
So this is a really cool early reflection just because it's also diffusing the start position. So it's making it softer and spreading out the stereo field. So it's also making this pre-delay effect. And pre-delay is in pretty much every reverb. Pre-delay offsets the start point of the delayed signal. So it sounds like it reflects at a longer time. So it creates the illusion that there's something farther.
Cherish the moments with you. Respectfully, I say to thee, I'm aware. Cherish the moments with you. Respectfully, I say to thee, I'm aware. Cherish the moments with you. 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 Cherish the moments with you.
All right, so in reverse mode, it's actually going to sound like it's being played forward.
Cherish the moments with you.
But you can hear the tail actually comes in a little bit before.
Cherish the moments with you. Cherish the moments
All right, so here's a quick delay effect that I do a lot, and this is the reverse reverb effect. So what I do, and reverse reverb sounds good with reverb, but I like shimmer because it just diffuses everything. Push that up, it makes it sound really wide and just like it's on this infinite plate. So that effect, if you wanted to make it sound like it kind of breathes into itself or something like comes in and you can reverse it, you know, pretty much the original lyrics and stuff like that. Gonna do that effect right now. So what I do is 100% wet verb on here, and then you reverse the signal. Now it's just hitting R, and then you just go and print that. So I can freeze it, and then take that frozen audio. So I got this tail now. And then I reverse that back here. So now it's playing the original audio in the correct direction, but now has this reverse reverb tail. Alright, then you just go back to the original, reverse that back, take off the effects, and then you can go and fade into it. You can also like stack it with the original.
Cherish the moments with you.
So you can stack it with the original or just take it out.
Cherish the moments with you.
So that's a really cool effect just right into a drop or something like that. It's called prelapse, and that is when you reverse a sound into another sound in order to make it hit harder. So for an impact sound or like a concussion sound, which is like when a bomb goes off, there's this moment of impact where everything goes to 0 and then everything goes to... What is going on with this fucking bot? How do I delete this shit? Good lord. Okay, so anyways. Everybody refresh your chat. Jesus. Banned. Alright, follower only chat now for the next hour. Yeah, I had a bot going in and then taking everything out, but then it was taking out a lot of other stuff. Okay, so anyways, that's annoying. All right, so that's shimmer there. That's a diffusion-based grain delay. So it's kind of like Paul stretch a little bit. Paul stretch stretches things out, granulizes it, but kind of gives a similar effect in sound. But yeah, so let's talk about a couple other grain delays. So we have grain delay in Ableton, and then we have grain delay in Absinthe. So Absinthe grain delay is pretty dope. So I'm just going to clear the chat. That's what happens. Sorry. All right, so now we gotta like pretty much just patch this in here. So let's use Absinthe effects first, because it's a little bit more heady. So Absinthe effects, you just load it up. When you turn it on, it'll either play an oscillator or an audio input. So we want to get audio in, stereo. So it's going to go through the whole thing. Aetherizer is a grain delay. So let's talk about this one before we talk about the module one. So this randomizes the pitch of each of these little grains that are created with this knob right here. So whenever you randomize it, you can see each grain change in value. When you transpose it, you can see them change their position. Double click, typeable values. Grain creation, you get a pre-delay before every grain that you can go and input right here. You can't see that happen. And then you can change the amount of grains. So rate per second. How many grains per second will be created? 1,000 hertz. So then we can change our grain duration. How long is each grain?
Cherish the moments with you. 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 Cherish the moments with you.
So our feedback is right there for each grain. We also have a master feedback as well. We can change this in 2 seconds and then create a micro delay here as well. Okay, so rate how many grains are created, feedback, how it's going to feedback on itself, transposition changes the pitch. So that's pretty much how the aetherizer works. That's all the functions here. Then we can synchronize it with the beat, put a low pass filter on it, change the gain, mix it in with the dry wet signal right here, input individual channel strips into it, or just the master channel strip, and then change all the types over here. So we have pipe, which is kind of like corpus, but we have 2 pretty much resonator points in the position on that resonator. Multiple comb filter, multi-tap delay, which is only 3 taps, unfortunately. Echoes, which is another resonator / delay. And then resonators, which give you these different kind of convolutions to kind of resonate. So I just want to talk about the aetherizer, because this is directly a grain delay. At some point, we're going to talk about the rest of these. But I encourage you to apply some of the knowledge we just talked about to the rest of them if you have Absinthe effects. Because you can also use Absinthe in the surround setting and then spin it around the surround field. So send it to 7.1 surround sound and then, have a patch spin around. Yes, I use Granulator too. Go check out the early sampler. I think it's sampler week 2. We talked about Granulator 2 and Polygon from Glitch Machines. Okay, so yeah, this one's pretty cool. But probably the coolest thing in here is the filter section, because you can over resonate it really, really hard. And you can see the color change when you over resonate it. And then you can randomize that pitch or that filter cutoff. Randomize your resonator. Alright, so that's super cool. But on top of randomizing this filter amount, we can have it randomized into a quantized scale progression. So if I put it into a minor 7th chord and then over resonate, it has to be over resonated. Go push it past 200 to 500 to 1000, depending on how much you want to hear.
Cherish the moments with you. 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 Cherish the moments with you.
Alright, so that is the filter quantization. So that works in here. But also, it works in the patcher as well. So remember, that's turning this on, changing it to bandpass filter. There's also a comb filter that we can also quantize. Alright, so that's pretty cool. So in the patcher here, let's just patch this one up. It's really, really simple. We go into here, at the bottom, cloud, and then now we have the transposition.
Cherish the moments with you.
Cherish the moments with you.
We have a filter section in between. So again, R is randomization. Rate is how many grains per second.
Cherish the moments with you. Cherish the moments with you. Cherish the moments with you.
And then this is delineation or just, deviation.
Cherish the moments.
This will kind of randomize and kind of like scramble it a little bit. And then we have a filter section over here. Again, we can re-quantize it and then set it to a scale. Go fit stack. Stacking means it's going to go and stack up a couple voices in the octave range.
Moments with you. Cherish the moments.
Alright, so that sounds pretty weird. But yeah, so I'm controlling all the grains here, stacking them in fits, over resonating them, randomizing the pitch. Same exact stuff I'm doing in the Aetherizer, which just has more functionality, more controls. Yo, what's up, Aaron? We had to delete the chat because someone was dropping some dick butts. I don't even know what that's about. All right, so moving on from that, let's talk about grain delay now, because we talked about the little bit more confusing version, but now we have this grain delay, which has this XY modular. So we can set X to modulate either pitch or, frequency. So we can just set that right here. Also feedback, spray. So all those functions can be modulated with this XY modulator. So spray is going to kind of like change the kind of like time of each of the grains. So it gives kind of a range where it's going to start spraying different possible, delays. So it can be sunk to the time, or it can be millisecond based. But this gives it another value on top of that. All right, so spray sprays it around the frequency range. Now frequency modulates the pitch of each of the grains with this fixed frequency oscillator. Alright, so it's modulating those parameters by patching into the two parameters above and below it. So it modulates spray time as well as pitch. So technically it's modulating amplitude and pitch at the same time. Alright. Yeah, so this is an interesting effect. What's it great for though? And that would be monster sounds. So I'm gonna make a monster sound. Perfect. Can you do that again? Let's take that one more time. Alright, so monster effects rely heavily on grain delay. Heavily. And also repitch effects. So slowing down an animal with pitch modulation is pretty much going to always create like the right source content for a monster sound. So that's turning off warp and then pitching it down, so you can get a bunch of different versions of this. So I'm going to drop on the grain delay here, as well as paired with like vocoding, saturation. There's a bunch of different ways. Let's just drop an OTT on there just so we can get a little bit more girth from it. So that sounds cool. how would I go and expand on this with a layer? Pretty much duplicate this. I would start to warp this guy who has been detuned via repitch already. Probably put this in texture and then layer this. That's some type of like android fucking monster dying. And then this would be a little bit more of a goblin demon kind of thing. So usually in microtonal as well. You also try monkeys. That's a little monkey. He's whooping. Oh, that's like a really, really sweet giant monster that you just like stumble on. It's like, get on the Gorfnoff. It's very friendly, but they look really terrifying. It's saying, get on its back. I'll take you across this open world map. Alright, so that's grain delays in a nutshell. You can do a lot of crazy shit with them. I really like grain delays for monster sounds. I use that for sound design shit and a lot of stuff. Specifically this grain delay, as well as other grain delays in tandem with it. Okay, so you got some time left here. I want to talk about reverbs now. So let's talk about some reverbs. So we have Valhalla reverb. Valhalla reverb is really good as well. I'm going to load up the hall verb. Or room verb. My bad. Same thing. Rooms can be chambers as well as halls. Vintage verb is kind of a mixture of both. It's also a little bit darker. Alright, so I was talking about RT60, so that's decay over time. So you can make this extend for a very long time, and it's going to be generated over time. So that's how reverbs work in general. Reverbs have a lot of DSP that calculate all these little delayed signals or copies in order to resynthesize the tail that you want to create with these copies, pretty much. Alright, so there's modulation in here that's patched into this decay amount, just like all the other decays or delay signals. So decay here is just telling RT60 how to decay over time. So 100 seconds, so RT60 technically can be calculated to decay to infinity, and that's kind of the whole point. Is they have endless verbs and room verbs. So EOS is similar to this. It's pretty much Valhalla plate. but in a little CPU intensive animated plugin. And then there's waves for plates, plate verb. The waves plate verb is actually super good. So Abbey Road's plates. It's another CPU intensive UI. So it's an actual like plate verb that they've emulated here. So what's the difference between a plate verb and a room verb? In the real world, plate verbs are giant plates that are suspended in rooms. And there's a mechanism inside this giant wooden box that holds onto a giant metal plate. And that giant metal plate gets resonated by a transducer and then picked up by another transducer. So they're like supposed to be emulated kind of like this. It's pretty much what they're emulating here. In a big resonant chamber room, there is a hanging box. And when I worked at Fantasy Studios, they had like 4 or 5 in one room, and you weren't supposed to play them super loud. Also, if you were to use them, you had to like rent them out. So nobody else is using them at the same time, because you can pretty much get bleed from the other plate verbs in one room. And then hall verbs or room verbs are emulating putting a mic inside of a room that you go and put an amp in. And so you just put a live speaker inside of a room, project sound out in that room, and then just put a mic and record it. So the same thing can be done just from your monitor position. You can just go and mic that up if you really like the way it sounds in your room. Go mic it up from your monitors and then put it back in your session. A lot of people do that. Lauren has definitely said in public, like that's kind of how he does a lot of his shit. But yeah, to what Raid Zero is saying, plate verbs are definitely super good on drums, especially on like snares specifically, because they're really bright, they're really resonant. So in a room verb, it's going to have a lot of like low end and mid range and all that other stuff, whereas a plate verb is just really high and bright. So that's the whole point of those. So each of these kind of have like a different version of that. Eventide introduced one of the first digital reverbs, which calculated RT60 and all this other shit that was extremely hard to process at that time. So like imagine putting like a mild supercomputer inside of a reverb and then putting that into a hardware thing for studios to use. Back then it was probably well over $25K. Now it's about $5,000 to $8,000. So there's a ton of different emulations for that. A lot of them are super good though. Nothing beats the Eventide. Definitely have used one before. It sounds too good. Also does convolutions and all that shit now, so it's utilizing the DSP for other shit. Okay, so you can modulate depth of time in this. We can also do that in this one. This one we do not have that much control. We just have the timbre. We just have the sound that we're getting from it. So let's actually put this onto the vocal, because this is mainly what I use this one for. I'll use the plate verb on snares sometimes. Alright, so we have a bunch of different plate verbs. We have our gold, bronze, this is silver, and then that's iron. Click on the little animation, changes it a bit. I'm sure you're seeing the frames drop out on that. But yeah, so what's the difference between all these? Gold is going to be dark, warm, and then copper, silver is going to be a little bit brighter, a little bit more resonant, and then iron is supposed to be the brightest because it is the heaviest. So you have a treble control, a dampener. So a dampener on a actual analog plate verb is this like felt clamp that you have to go and turn up manually in order to turn down the amount of reverb that you're getting from the plate verb. So you can also cut the bass, a bunch of other things. You can also kind of cut the tail by adding this into a send. I typically put reverbs, depending on what I need it for. If I'm doing like a big break section, I'll have a send for the verb. But if it's like a momentary hit, I will put the verb on the track and then automate the dry wet. So it's a little bit more controllable that way. Also gives me a lot more direct use of one type of verb. So I usually use EOS for a lot of stuff, but if I want it to sound bigger and more, supported in the low mid-range, then I'll go for the room, or like Valhalla Vintage Verb. Vintage Verb is a little bit different, but pretty much the same. I don't think I authorized this one yet. I really like the Vintage Verb UI. So you have two different versions of this. You have color, 1970s, 1980s, and then now. So each of those will kind of be a little bit different taste, and these are for halls and verbs. Hall verbs and room verbs. So it's not so you can create a plate verb like this. They have Valhalla plate for that. And again, EOS 2 is pretty much Valhalla plate. So you have up to 70 here. Diffusion network, we can change the amount of diffusion on either our early reflections or our late reflections. If you pull all the way down, it's going to turn into a delay. There's going to be like slapback, depending on how long your decay is as well. So proximity effect, when things are farther away, it takes longer for their sound to reach you. So pre-delay emulates that, and then diffusion emulates how many reflections are going to happen in between you and the sound source. And then dampening network, how much each frequency is going to be either pulled down or excited. So base multiplier on here is 1.5 by default, so it's kind of already gearing you for a darker, warmer sound. And then we have our room shape, size, the type of attack. Attack means what type of material is on the wall. Is it a chamber made of like cement, or is it a treated room that's just really big and has a resonant floor? So there's like a bunch of different perspectives on how you want to go and shape your room. Logic has a lot of really, really good reverbs. I really like the gold verb and I think it's the platinum verb. Platinum verb's super sick, gives you an actual room shape to kind of work with. I do wish Sound Toys made a reverb as well. I don't even know if they've made something in a while. I haven't seen a new Sound Toy plugin in a minute, besides Little Ultra Boy. But yeah, so that's kind of that with, just understanding what this is doing. This is a hall room verb, but this is also a hall room verb. These are different types of halls, though. This is specifically halls and verbs and dark chambers. Whereas this can be bright chambers and, long caves and shit like that. Narcissus is going to be like this really, really long reflective space. These are different, pretty much settings for its diffusion network. Okay, so really long hall, long chamber, and then we can have all these nice dark concert halls. I really like the concert hall in here. Dirty hall is nice. Smooth plate. You know, it gives you a lot of different vibes. Non-linear is probably the weirdest one. Kind of a washout granular mode. All these chambers are going to be a little bit brighter because chambers are usually made of some type of stone. So like granite, you know, cement. A lot of the chambers and, you know, reverb chambers that are inside of studios are actual like cement made. And then their shapes are kind of geared to make certain types of reflections. Because you don't want to create room nodes, you want to create a really reflective space that just constantly reflects on uneven surfaces. So a lot of them have angled ceilings and all this other shit kind of like designed into its construction. Appreciate everybody coming through. Okay, so and for all the new follows, I really appreciate you. Oh wait, Volg? Hey, I love you, by the way. All your shit on Enigmatic Records, really, really cool shit. Okay, so yeah, I really, really dig the vintage verb, the room, shimmer, all that stuff. They're all kind of the same. Diffusion networks create a string of delays that are amazing, and kind of like, you know, darken the sound either with its tonality or with the way it decays over time. So now plate verbs, you know, just like I showed with the waves plate verb that has little to no control, this EOS gives you 3 different plates and a super hall. So the super hall is kind of like Narcissus, or these are emulations. The LV426 is another emulation. I think Sulaco is kind of like that as well. So yeah. Let's close these down for the moment. Alright, so I really, 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 really like the way EOS sounds through compression. And this is why I use individual reverbs on bass sounds, because when you go and process an individual bass sound with, you know, reverb and all that stuff, if you blast it up with like OTT or whatever compression saturation, it gives this really, really, you know, interesting kind of like harmonic balance that just like, I really like it when pretty much anybody does it in like deep dubstep. Personally, I like started doing it a lot because I heard Moody Good doing it a lot in his first album, which is not really his sound anymore, but, you know, really inspired me back then. So like that definitely got me doing a lot of those individual effects on individual parts like that in order to just throw a sound. So reverb throws are really, really crucial to making the actual sound just change up. It's part of ear candy. Ear candy is super important for making like Nero, drum bass, anything that's going to be repetitive. Because of the complexity of those genres, you have to go and say the same thing multiple times in order for people to digest it. So ear candy is how you make it interesting the whole time. Yeah. So yeah, reverb on the bass. It's kind of a vibe. But yeah, before compression, give a really interesting effect. One thing that will pretty much always happen is a click and pop when you go and modulate it while it's moving. So a quick modulation or a quick on and off when you need it and when you don't is kind of crucial. So you don't get that click and pop from the modulation moving. Some of the other like cleaner plugins will have less of that, but this definitely will have it. Okay, so final thing. It's convolution reverb. So let's load up the convolution in Max. And then we'll talk about some Doppler effects to kind of end off the day with, because that's going to be just an intro to that, because I do a lot of like the sound design to picture shit. So, you know, that's a huge part of my workflow for that. All right, so let's go to Convolution Pro, because we're pros. We're pros. Compressed reverb tails is a big future funk staple. That is true. And personally, with live, can you start responding? Give you another second. Oh, live just crashed. It was like, no. Oh, wait, no. We good. But yeah. So where I started with sound design was with Glitch Hop. Like, in a big way. I started producing music and making garage and all that other shit. But Future Funk is definitely different than Glitch Hop. I would definitely call them different things, but that's kind of where I come from with it. So I'm super into scope, super into Cohen sound, super into culprit. Everyone from Bristol, pretty much. Whatever was happening in Bristol, whatever's in the water there, I'll have that. I'll take it. Yeah, Burial. Burial was literally my like intro almost into electronic music as a whole. Just because I really, really got into Burial when I was in high school and shit. Heard dubstep through Excision, a couple other places, but really, like, I'm just about emo music, and Burial was just so emo, it just like spoke to me. Okay, so we have a new session. It is brand spanking new. Yeah, also Lorne. Lorne is very similar to that. Lorne is one of the reasons why I got into sync licensing and kind of branching off into doing more than just electronic music, because electronic music is what I kind of got into this for. I come from metal, so I just produce metal and shit, and I was just making like drums and stuff for metal, and then I started getting into electronic music. Ableton is just like taking a shit right now. My bad. But yeah, so like for everybody new, if you want to, you know, hit up the Discord and get, you know, access to all my different outlines here, because I have a whole, everything I just talked about right here, literally right here. So I feel like I'm ranting, and I am, for sure. But, you know, this stuff is actually really interesting to me, and hopefully to you too. But yeah, so RT60 is extremely deep. It's not a basic thing. That's why reverbs are well respected, because when reverbs were original, like a spring reverb or anything like that, and we actually didn't talk about spring reverbs, but I'll show you one that I have when Ableton decides to load up in like a second here. But we also talked about delay effects on track delays, and also kind of spacing things out with diffusion and how to do all this other stuff. So everything else now, post 2 o'clock. Wait, what time is it? Oh, it's 3 o'clock, my bad. I'm an hour behind my own time. Yeah, it's going to be like advanced. So this is kind of like now talking about the advanced forms of delay manipulation. And a huge recommendation is to watch this documentary. So read all the included links and then watch this documentary. What the bleep do we know? If you've never heard of this documentary, it's not anything that's like political or whatever. It's Michio Kaku is he's a quantum theorist physicist, and he's a very well respected scientist. And pretty much he explains the world the way a blind or deaf person would understand it, and how our brains kind of link sounds to not only events but into distance, time, all this stuff. It's super good. Yeah, and he looks like Albert Einstein if he was reborn in Japan. Oh man, my Ableton is just not having a good day. Not stoked on that. Just want to open the convolution, man. Don't worry about it. But yeah, hit up the Discord if you're trying to get access to all that stuff. Last class I talked about FM in depth for a couple hours, and it's a 50-page reference manual pretty much on FM. Let's try recovering. Yeah, so that 50-page manual on FM is kind of like a summation of like sidebands and all that other stuff, and how to manipulate and how to use an FM synthesizer correctly. That stuff is really, really confusing because of the fact that it is super deep. It's not something that like... Oh, I see what's happening here. Max is just crashing just over and over right now. It's probably because I have all these things open on my computer. So we're just gonna load it up with no Max for the moment. I do want to show you guys Doppler effects though. It would be really, really dope if this shit loaded up in the next couple seconds. Let me quit some other shit here. Okay, so one second. This is great. It's all good though. I'm just gonna load it up with no plugins, and we're just gonna try that out just for a second. But yeah, definitely go and grab that shit. Also, I have a ton of like free samples and stuff. If you want to go and like hit that shit up. Again, everything in Discord is free, and this class is free. So yeah, there's a ton of shit I just talked about with delays specifically that is just like really intense. So highly recommend, if you didn't catch the whole video, to go back and sweep through it just so we can like you know, understand what's going on here. Yeah, this is super unfortunate that Max is deciding to fuck my computer like this. It's just saying, it's putting a gun to my computer's head and just like saying, turn yourself off, turn it back on, because we hate you. That's pretty much what I'm going to do right now. And I'm starting it over from 0 as well. It's just continuously starting Max over and over again. It'd be doing this sometimes. Yeah, I have legit Ableton, legit everything Max, but sometimes it does this. Thank God, dude. Thanks, Sign God. Sign God has blessed me today with a working version of Ableton that I paid $800 for. So if Ableton's watching this, I want you to really, really just think about that for a second. That this is a production thing. It's why people, when I work professionally on stuff, they tell me, hey, do you work in Ableton? Can you not? And then I tell them, oh yeah, no worries. And then I do it anyways. Because Ableton does this. So Ableton has a long way to go still. Max also has a long way to go still. Because if this was Pro Tools, this would not be the case. My computer would have just died. It would have not let me sit there for a while. But also my computer is OP, so it shouldn't be doing this at all. Okay, so Doppler from Waves is a combination of reverb, delay, panning, proximity effect. So we talked about proximity effect already. What is proximity effect? It is moving a sound closer to you or farther away. What happens when you do that? And in the doc here, I have a version of that. And that's right here. So you can see that from the sound source, it's static. But when it moves closer to something, the pitch increases. And when it moves farther away, the pitch decreases because the length of the waveform from the sound source is moving closer and farther away from you. It is accordion style hitting your ears. So that means you have to modulate pitch, amplitude, reverb, and delay in order to create a correct, a correct actual like proximity effect or Doppler effect. So track time down here is in frames. So I can have it track from one point to another point over this amount of time. So this is really cool with resamples and random bass sounds and stuff because you have all this like harmonic content that you're working from and you're not really worried about, all this other like harmonic content in there. Also, even just the timbre, what you're even working with. You can just work with a straight up drone sound and do this. Yeah, so at rate 0, I appreciate all that. I have Clean My Mac up here that kind of does all that shit for me now. But yeah, it's really just, it's Max for Live. Max for Live does not have its, pretty much its JavaScript balanced yet. So every time I load up Max, it completely fucks my frame rate up. Not even when I'm streaming, just when I'm using regular shit. That's something it really needs to fix because they said it would be fixed on this new version and it's actually a little bit more broken now. So I've messaged them about that and it's really just like, all right, you can beta test. That's pretty much it. So until the next big update, we're not going to see any real big improvements with Max because Max is Max. It's not Ableton. So that's the huge problem with it. Everything generated and instrument wise in Ableton is Max technically, but it's optimized for Ableton. But yeah, so this is a combination of both delay and reverb and amplitude and modulation. So it's combining something that you can literally create easily with, any effect. Say if you want to create like an engine sound, you can use Auto Panner and then use it as a tremolo. So that means push the phase back to 0 so it doesn't look like this. Left and right channel modulate with the same amplitude curve and then, gradually increase it over time. What I like to do in order to get that happening quick is I macro together my rate knob and my amount knob, and so I can just turn it up. More amount, higher frequency. Alright, so really simple UI. You can trigger this manual, you can trigger from its own energy, you can have it loop, forward backwards mode, or in a continuous cycle. And then these amounts just add gain modulation, panning, pitch, air dampener, which is a mild early reflection, and then a reverb, all with this one line. So you can modulate point to point. So pretty much in any direction, left and right. Then you can also change the direction in which it's coming from. You also change the amount of time it hangs out in the center. And that time is also relative to your tracking time. So this shit's super sick with just any bass sample, and I'll just go and sit down and like let it run while I modulate basses and shit. But for other things like this resample, I've been using in a ton of tracks lately. But yeah, this was a really cool one for this. Appreciate all the follows. Yeah, pod racers, bruv. Okay, so that's that. That's one really cool hidden waves effect. Sometimes I forget about it and then I remember it exists. Okay, so I did actually disable all my plugins to get this to run. Let's see, Isotope, are you still here? Okay, so I do want to talk about a couple different spatial effects here. I'm going to just talk about the imager for the moment, because I don't want to go and re-enable all my VST3s. The things I do for Max. Is it really damaged? Hold on, let me open up 7. Just load up the wave shell first. Okay, so I just want to talk about divergence a little bit. So divergence is pretty much what I'm making here. So divergence is this triangle. Width is the stereo width of any sound that you're running. Alright, so when I go and push the width above, to 3.0, so above my actual range here, I start to create phasing and width phasing. So it's actually creating phasing just to make it sound wider. It's like a micro chorus. Then asymmetry shifts the phase in stereo field. So I can rotate it on an axis, left and right channel. Why is this cool? Because I can go and set this in a stereo surround setting and then actually kind of make it change its angle in the stereo field. Not even just placement, changing an angle. So when we look at things with our eyes, phase happens with light. And so this is kind of like manipulating that aspect, but now with phase and sound. So asymmetry can offset your center channel. Almost like a mild mid-side mode, but there's also a mid-side monitoring mode and a mid-side input mode. So that can be an interesting effect. But yeah, so what makes the actual imager from Ozone a little bit different is, well, with Ozone 9, and we'll see if I can get Ozone actually working here. load in audio units. Okay, so with Ozone 9, they actually developed a new type of imaging for specifically ozone, and it's like spectral imaging. But yeah, so Ozone 8 and 7 both have the typical like width modulation. So that's left and right channel being modulated by a micro delay. So Ozone 7, like this, pretty much works very consistently. But Ozone 9 definitely is a little bit cleaner, you know, and that's their claim, is that it has no phasing now. But yeah, when you're in one of these imagers, just to get you started in it, first learn the timbre. Alright, so it's saying the mid-range is kind of around here. So hit the learn button while running it, and it will go and map your crossovers to the correct, you know, kind of voicing, especially for the low end. That's really what I'm looking for. Mid-range I kind of vary up because it really is fine-tuned taste on that. It's not, this is correct, this is not. You can make it 100% wide on all of them and say that's dope, and it's correct. You know, it's really subjective, you know. So when it's not, though, is on masters. So when you're using an imager, I say, personally, never use an imager on a master unless you're mastering for somebody or remastering something. Just because it adds phase and it will offset your low end and will kind of drown out your kick because of those phase offsets. It'll make it sound quieter just because it's out of phase just a tiny amount. So when I go and balance out an image, I like to get my lows pretty mono. I can either use this to get my lows mono, or I can use utility to do the bass mono, or I can go and, you know, add another imager, just make that mono on a single band, and then open everything up again. So I can make the image mono and then turn it into stereo if I want to. And sometimes I do that if the phase is really fucked up. And this sometimes happens with like Eurorack shit. Or with like live effects. You know, if it's gonna have like a reverb on it or whatever, and now I got the low end from that reverb, but it's all over the place, then I'll just go and make it mono. So all the way, whip down, or just make it mono. Then I go recreate the image using the white. Alright, so general rule of thumb is you want your mids mid-range. So I guess like 25% to 30 to 50% if you're filming super wide. And then everything else, so high mids, 50%, 75% on the highs. You don't want it to be super wide because then it'll start to introduce more phasing. So yeah, when I'm setting up an image on a main bass sound or something like that, I'm really trying to get the lows kind of in sync and with the image of my sub, with my kick. I want them all to kind of like hit in one kind of stereo field, because I want them all to have equal power and just be really up front, not washed out and in the back of the mix. And that creates depth if you want that, but you know, with your main attraction, kick, snare, bass, that's definitely got to be up front. So you got to understand like when that's actually happening, and especially with understanding delay and track delays and all that other stuff, you know, that'll kind of like fill in itself when you start to just gain more experience with that stuff. But yeah, so you know, if you really want to get more familiar, read through this doc as well. Again, I talked about all this stuff specifically. You know, I'm pretty in depth as well, so this is going to be a reference guide. I linked a bunch of different articles that had good stuff that I liked, I think was relevant. There's this one article on proximity effects by Neumann that I think is pretty good. Definitely read through that one. I just like cut an excerpt from it, but this is just kind of talking about, you know, how to think about proximity effect. But DJs on the radio to sound like Barry White, and many a singer would sound like the skinny kid he is. I don't even, it's like, it's so, like, Neumann wrote this. Neumann, the company that has $8,000 mics. Yeah, I think it's funny. But also, this is really, really true, because when you go and change your distance from something, it gives you more representation on different frequencies. But we notice this from our ears perspective, from our perceived loudness, from what we perceive as loudness, and from what audio is. So, like, if we understand, like, proximity affects all of these things, then we actually know how to create proximity effect with just our mix to make things sound loud. Because loud, to us as just normie producers, is better. Loud is not better. Loud is louder. You can turn shit up louder if you want it to be louder. So you need to understand when, you know, louder is what you need because you want it to sound more in front of something, in the back of something, to the side, to whatever side. You know, if you want to make it sound like it's on the other side. Like Ubermod has width setting to 200%, and they say that at the 200%, it's supposed to sound like it's behind the listener position. So it creates, again, like divergence and phase to create the effect that something's behind you. Kind of like if you're playing a video game and somebody's actually walking behind you, but you're not listening in stereo. Or, I mean, you're not listening in surround, you're listening in stereo. So you're actually hearing a phased out version of what's happening behind you. Really not giving you much of a depth perception on it. It just sounds like it's probably behind you. Okay, so that's pretty much it for today. Sorry about that Ableton fuck up. Really no control over when Max decides to take a shit. Definitely dumping the buffer, dumping all the cache stuff. You know, it's just like at the end of the class here, so it's a lot of data I'm transferring out by running all this stuff. So that's just kind of what happens. Definitely recommend this app. It was like $20-$30, but this shit lets me know when I need to like clear shit up. So I have my main drive partitioned into like a bunch of different things, and then you know, I have another boot camp drive, and then 32 gigs of RAM that I need to free up. Like right now, every time I say a word, it goes up and down. I don't like to look at that. It makes me overthink my RAM. But anyways, so that's it for today. Definitely, if you are trying to become part of the class, hit up the Discord, hit up a mod for the link to Discord. It is going to be invite only for the rest of the month still. So you just have to come through. And also, if you're part of it, feel free to invite whoever you want and invite as many people as you want. Yeah, just kind of closing the doors just a little bit, just so it's not just open to any old rando that decides to click on it and then post dick pics in my chat. In my fucking chat, bro. You kidding me? Sorry about that. Jesus. I think that's a result of whatever's happening this month. Nah, it's just fucking Twitch being Twitch. Okay, so yeah, check into the Discord to see when I'm going to be starting up the audio engineering class. That should be next week or the week after, but next week is the last week of 101 for synthesis and sampling. So come through with that. And yeah, I'm just going to like get more specific mod privileges and shit so I can just like eliminate shit like that super quick. Because I haven't had to deal with anything like that yet, but now I do. And now I have the option to delete anything. But yeah, so we'll talk about that. Also, if you're new to the course, there's a course outline in here that kind of has a full overview of what the school's about, why is it free, who the hell I am. Do you want to get a PhD? Fuck it, dude. I'll give you a PhD. So yeah, different levels of graduation. So if you want to graduate, you got a GED version and a PhD version. It's going to be all different classes for all that shit. And all the outlines for where this class is going. And this is going to be updated over time. And I have my homie Zach Countryman coming in to teach the Eurorack. And then my other buddy Raid Zero, who's in the chat, teaching DJ. He's like super good DJ, taught me how to DJ on CDJs. So I highly respect him, recommend him. So yeah, a ton of shit to learn. Literally, this whole course just writes itself. So it's not really like anything too crazy. It's nothing I'm taking from anyone either. This is all brand spanking new from whatever I think is relevant. But yeah, so ton of stuff on Faceplant coming up, FM8, Car Plus Strong, which is physical modeling. Then we're 301 class is going to be high level shit in VCV rack and reactor. So stick around for that if you're trying to get to that point. I'm thinking about starting up a 150 class where we just go into VCV rack only, and just kind of do stuff with that. So stay tuned for that. And these are just things that I can just do because I have some time. It doesn't take that much time to film the class. It does take a lot of time for me to write this shit though. So yeah, all this stuff is some real elbow grease I'm having to do to like put these like guides together. Really, it's like I started this as like a thing for me so I could have something to go off of, but I realized that it would actually be a really good thing. No school I've ever been to has given me one of these type of guides, like a study guide per class, unless it's like some type of preset thing for history class or whatever the fuck. So definitely this is going to be the most beneficial for you because it's, you know, more in depth, just like hardcore learning stuff that I link in a lot of this, especially for the FM stuff. If you really want to know FM, you got to actually learn some Stanford shit, bro. There's some things from Stanford that John Chowning posted and developed back in the 1970s and 80s that are just literally the most basic way to think about FM synthesis in general. And that's how I developed all my formulas that I gave out for FM synthesis and predicting sidebands. Yeah, and yeah, of course, you know, no problems at all. I am here to give. I decided I wanted to make my life worth something and enrich people around me. So you owe me nothing for this. All right, so that's it for today. And tomorrow I'm gonna stream some respaces. So come through if you want to hang out while I make some shit in Faceplant. Yeah, I also might use some serum patches. You guys were like checking out my serum patches the other day, so I'll show you a couple of them. I use a lot of these for resampling and shit. But yeah, they're all really poorly named. Montezuma is meat 2 through 5. Montezuma is clump. Montezuma is clump or domper. Actually, I haven't installed it yet, but that will be something I do because I haven't actually been using serum at all lately. I've just been using VC Rack and Faceplant. Let me just blow up the speakers right now. Yeah, I just blew up everybody's ears. Here, check this one out. So these are like transformer sounds that I kind of like make for like robotic sounds and Doppler effects, flip effects, spin effects. There's all this stuff. This is also an engine sound.